Hey Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
If you could invite Michelle up, that would be great. This is the Complete Entrepreneur, and it's going to be a very interesting show today. We are on Startup Club. Startup Club has almost 900,000 members, if you can believe that. It's such an achievement to see how big this club has grown and what we've achieved over the last year. We're hoping to crack 1 million members. So if you're listening to this show in the now or in the on the website or in a recording, please join our club. It's really fun, and we have a lot of great speakers. We also have an email list on startup.club where you can sign up to, and I'm not going to tell you the author, but we have a really big author who's coming on next month. And if you want to know about that, you really do need to sign up to that mailing list. We've had on the founder of Reebok, we've had on many serial entrepreneurs, billionaires. We've had on many authors, and you're not going to know about it unless you sign up to that mailing list. All right, Michael is back, and he is our host for the Complete Entrepreneur. And I know today we're talking about the mental challenges of being an entrepreneur, of running your startup. And I have a study that I'd like to talk a little bit about, Michael, if you give me a few minutes when you have a chance.
Not a problem. Can you guys hear me? Because I'm right now in an Uber in Boston and heading to a hotel. So am I
Loud
coming
and
through
clear,
okay?
loud and clear. And I will say that
Fantastic.
Michelle and I are coming from a remote island in the Gulf of Mexico, and we just got Starlink installed about 3 hours ago. And it sounds like it's working out really well. It's phenomenal. It's such a game changer to be able to be in a remote part of the world and then actually be able to have high speed internet. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Fantastic. It's incredible the world we live in. Anyway, yes, my name is Michael Gilmore, and you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur. And this is where we take a look at not only the business aspects of being an entrepreneur, but the life of an entrepreneur. And it's great to have you all here with us today. And we're discussing a really interesting topic. And is stress of your startup killing you? Is stress your startup killing you? Because there's one thing for certain is that stress is real and it has physical ramifications to it, that's for sure. And just to tell a brief story, I remember many years ago, um, I periodically get sick. I would just get sick. And one day I was sitting up in bed. The family had gone out somewhere, and I was laid up in bed. And I began to write my to-do list, and I had like 3 or 4 pages of to-do items with 2 columns back and front of all the things I had to do. And it really hit me then that I thought, boy, I'm doing way too much here, and this is really what's causing me to get sick. And so I began to make some big changes to my life and huge changes, in fact. As an entrepreneur, I began to realize that this is not good for me. It's not also good for my business. So that's an example of it, and of what it means that some stress will have physical ramifications of upon your life as an entrepreneur. And let me tell you, when you get sick because of the amount of work, say you're doing, or the stress you're under, and things like that, it's not good for you, and it's not good for your business. Yeah. So I just want to hand it back to Colin. You had something you said you really wanted to share. And but actually, just before we do, Colin, sorry, if you're in the audience and you're there and you're saying, "Gee, this is resonating with me. This topic. I'm under so much stress right now. Like, how do you guys solve that in your businesses and your lives?" Then stick up your hand. We'd love to invite you up on stage. Or if you're sitting there going, "Gee, I've got a great idea that I did. It really helped me out." Then once again, we'd love to have you up on stage. So in the meantime, Colin, I'll hand it back across to yourself.
Oh, it's great, Michael. And by the way, I just shared the room on Clubhouse. And if you're on the stage or you're in the audience and you think that this topic is important, and I know we don't talk about this a lot when it comes to startup club and startups. We're all super strong. We're all like these, we're these icons that just keep producing. But the fact of the matter is, we're human and we do get stressed. And I know there's other people who would like to hear about this. So that button on the bottom, second to the right, is a share button. Please share the room. And I think that there's a lot of people who could benefit from it. So I don't know if you know this, Michael. I think I've told you I've been writing a book. I signed a publishing deal with Forbes last year, and we pretty much had the first version is almost complete, the draft version, and one of the chapters is dedicated to what you're trying to do here on the Complete Entrepreneur, which is really the mental state of entrepreneurs. And I came across a study done by UC Berkeley, and Michael Freeman was the person who pioneered the study. I'm actually reached out to him. Michelle did today, and we're seeing if we can't get him on the show or on the club to talk about this. But 49% of entrepreneurs have reported one or more lifetime mental health conditions. 30% depression, Michael. ADHD, 29%. And I always knew ADHD was a talent, not a disorder, by the way. I've always known that. But 29%. This is 1 in 3 entrepreneurs have depression. 1 in 3 have ADHD. Substance use conditions, 12%. Bipolar, yes, bipolar, 11%. So you can see that there are these mental challenges, and they compared it to non-entrepreneurs and found that 67% I'm sorry, 49% I mentioned of entrepreneurs had mental health conditions. Only 32% of non-entrepreneurs have mental health conditions. So what's going on here? What is it that this startup is doing to us that gets us to a point where we need to open another bottle of wine and deal with our stress through that? Or I don't know, what is it? What is it these entrepreneurs have that's causing all of this damage? And if we can acknowledge it and understand it, how can we address it, Michael?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I was reading a very similar study on this, actually, Colin, and the fact that there's just so much, I guess, mental energy goes into to launching a business. I think of my own entrepreneurial journey when I started my first business when I was 16, and it was a big effort as a 16-year-old, and it just moved on from there and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things I found was that stress didn't go away. You didn't suddenly find that even with, I don't know how many years now, it's 40 years later. It's not like 40 years later, all the stress has gone away and everything is good. I know how to handle this all the time, because there's times in my current business where, hey, you know what? You're under stress. And it's how to handle that stress, though, which can be challenging at times. Like, for instance, I had a very, very big deal to do yesterday, as an example. And so I was up at 4 a.m. in the morning because, you know what? I just couldn't sleep. I woke up and I thought, I just may as well get to work. So I got to work at 4 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, and that happens still, even 40 years of being an entrepreneur with I don't know how many businesses over those years. And it does occur, Colin. And it can be a challenge. That's for sure. But I think that
I
one of the
can't
things, I
believe how
guess,
many times, Michael, I've been up at 3 a.m. and you can't fall asleep because you're thinking about this or thinking about that or thinking about this, and it's just unbelievable. And when everything's going really well, I sleep really well. When things are not going well, like I'm up and I've been up like a lot in the last few weeks, just given all my companies and where we're at, but it doesn't go away. And I don't know, that's not right. How do we handle this? Like, we're not doing this right.
yeah, it's an interesting one though. I think there's an aspect of entrepreneurs try to control something that in some instances you can't control. And I must admit, I said to one of the team, my team, I said, look, what you got to do is divide the things that you can control and things you can't control. And things you can control, you make sure they're nailed down. And things you can't control, then you go along and you work away at those issues. And that's the way I find it helps me manage the stress as such. Is that I use this example a lot. You know, what's his name? The actor in The Martian. He said, Matt Damon said, "Yeah, you solve one problem at a time, and then you get to go home." Or as entrepreneurs, we solve one problem at a time, and then you're able to go and be successful, or you achieve your goal, achieve that vision, or secure that client, or develop a business relationship. Yet you just sell one at a time, and I think that's one of the things that I've realized over the years is that, you know what, you need to work out though which problems you should be working on and which problems you also shouldn't be working on. And when I was laid up in bed that time, I had a really bad cold and everything because my immune system was completely shot because of the way I was abusing myself, basically. And I realized I was working on a whole lot of things I shouldn't be working on. What I should have been doing is basically handing across a lot of things I was doing to other people. Yes, they won't do it as well as you can because they're not as immersed in what you're doing as much as you are as an entrepreneur. But you know what? It takes it off your plate. And was it 3 days ago? I had one member of my team in one of my businesses, and I actually said to him, "Do you honestly think I want to put more things on my plate? I don't." I said, "I want to move them off my plate. So if you can take this off my plate, then I'm very, very happy to hand that across to you." And I think you use the term all the time: hand responsibility for something over. Don't just hand tasks.
Yeah.
Hand
So I mean,
responsibility
it's
over.
interesting. Interesting you talk. It's delegate responsibilities, not tasks, and that's one thing that can help you sleep better at night. Because we don't realize as entrepreneurs, when we're responsible for every piece of that business, that we don't just stop thinking about it. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're thinking about do we make the payroll done, or did I get the facilities management cleaned? Oh, we're thinking of these things, but something wonderful happens when you delegate responsibilities and not just tasks.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree with you, Colin. It makes a big difference. Sorry, Jeff, I'll hand it across to you in a second. I agree with you on that. It's about the delegation of responsibilities. And I find many entrepreneurs fall into the habit of delegating tasks versus responsibilities. And by delegating responsibilities, you're actually taking something off your plate. And that's the thing that I think I've particularly over the last probably few years, I really focused on is and really came down to the value of my time. And there's another thing I should put a spin on this, Colin, for you, and then we'll come to Jeff. And that is, yeah, I got up at 4 a.m. in the morning, but it wasn't necessarily because I was stressed out of my mind at 4 a.m. in the morning. I was stressed because I was so excited about the opportunity. That's why it's a different type of stress. Not being able to make payroll is a completely different stress compared to being excited about an opportunity. Not making payroll is a hideous place to be in. Um, Securing a really big opportunity is a fabulous place to be in. Um, and you can still get excited and not sleep and that sort of stuff in both those circumstances, and it impacts your health in different ways. But I just want to come back to you, Jeff, though, and then we'll come down to Gantz.
so. A few things. First of all, I actually don't agree that delegating responsibilities is going to help you relieve stress, because you're still going to be stressed potentially over making sure and worrying about whether the people you've delegated to are going to actually accomplish those tasks, and you're still going to have to keep an eye on them and inspect what you expect. So I think, while I think it's a very important practice to delegate responsibilities, not tasks. I'm not sure if it's something that's going to necessarily reduce stress as we're talking about today. I
He's
think that
fixing for a fight. He's fixing for a fight, Michael.
I think it's an
Oh, we got the boxing gloves on here.
I don't think it's related to the stress, right? Because there's stress when you have a bigger team, and even if they all have their responsibilities, and you're the founder or the CEO, or the department head or whatever, you're still going to have a lot of stress potentially over the team doing their jobs. But back to the issue of stress itself, and look, I've been doing this. Been in business for over 40 years, and now I'm finally, after 40 years, getting a lot better at managing my own stress. And that's two things I want to mention that I think are important to help you manage your stress as an entrepreneur. Number one, dopamine is a stress reliever. Technically, I mean, that's what it does. That's why we like dopamine hits, partially, I think. And I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but from my readings and experience, I think that's the case. So we get a dopamine hit when we complete a task. I think multitasking is a stress creator, and being mindful, being in the moment, learning to stay focused on a single task until it's completed is a skill that will become a stress reliever. And it's hard to do. I struggle with this on a daily basis. I sit down in front of the computer, I get lost in my inbox, I get bombarded by emails. A new email comes in, I stop what I'm doing, pay attention, drop that, jumping back and forth. That creates stress. What I'm trying to do on a daily basis is ignore those emails and check off on my list something that I'm going to do and complete. And I'm not going to interrupt myself with emails or anything else until I complete this task that's been sitting on my list. And then I get that nice shot of dopamine for having completed something, and it's a stress reliever. So learning how to be in the moment, be present, and stay focused on whatever you're doing. If you're in a meeting, close your laptop, pay attention to the meeting. Don't sit in a meeting and be daydreaming and stressing out about 10 other things you have to do, or sneaking a look at your phone for text messages, or sneaking a look at your email instead of the presentation that you're supposed to be looking at. And I'm guilty of all of these things, and I'm trying to stop doing them because I believe those things contribute greatly to stress. The second thing I'll mention, and then I'll shut up, is
Third,
the first was just objecting to what you guys said, but the last thing is another thing that's been super helpful for me in terms of managing stress is having a morning routine. In other words, when you wake up in the morning, instead of diving into the stress of the day, have two or three or four things that you do every single morning. That's your morning routine, and you can do them whether you're home, whether you're traveling in a hotel room, whether you're visiting family or friends. Just when you wake up in the morning, have a set morning routine. And that can include a lot of different things that also help with stress. So for example, my morning routine includes waking up, meditating. I've been practicing TM for 45 years. I meditate in the morning, then I exercise, and then I write in a journal, in a daily journal. And those four things I will do every morning, no matter what, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. And that gives you this sense of routine and clarity and purpose, and it helps start the day stress-free for me. But I know a lot of people believe
all
in,
right.
and I'll be
So
quiet
let
now.
me ask you a question, Jeff. How much sleep did I lose this week because of Good Morning America?
Yeah,
Zero.
you shouldn't have lost.
I'm not saying you lost sleep. Well, because you were responsible. You're the CMO of paw.com. It was a great segment. You hit it out of the park again, like you always do. Did I think about it? I almost never even thought about it. I didn't, honestly. And that's what I'm talking about here. I'm simply talking about trusting the people around you. Now, don't get me wrong. I said we have 10 companies in our incubator, right? And I'm sometimes one or two companies are just falling apart, and that's stressing the heck out of me. And I'm not sleeping, and then I have to jump in and deal with it. But if we have competent people, delegating responsibilities does reduce stress. And I think I just proved it there with the GMA, Good Morning America, that you did this week.
I
Yeah,
don't know. I stress out over what people are doing on my team sometimes, so maybe it's just me.
yeah. I think it's an interesting thing, and I'd like to jump down to Gantz. Gantz, what's your thoughts on this topic of stress, and how do you manage stress, say, in your business? It's great to have you on the Complete Entrepreneur.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, there's definitely I was just listening to all your guys' tips and 100% agree with everything. Um, Definitely like payroll and that kind of stress is a huge stress, but hopefully we don't, have to deal with that a lot or ever. Hopefully that would be the best thing. Um, but I find one thing I found out early in my journey, I guess, my business that I've just had for 15 years. I'm not a grinder or like a, in any sense. I'm just kind of, going along. But I found uh, early was procrastination kind of gives you a lot of stress. I had a situation very early when I took over the business that I needed a certain I needed a tobacco license, and I didn't know anything about it. And I needed it just to keep the business going because I just took it over and it was kind of a uh, high money maker. Um, and I was kind of just stressed about it. I just thought about it as a liquor license and I didn't know anything about it and I just procrastinated on it for months and months. And finally, when I did it, it was one piece of paper and it was about $25. So I just was like, what was I doing? I was just stressing about this thing I had to do and I was just putting it off and it was just on my mind the entire time. And once I did do it, it was easy. And I just kind of learned from that, like when you're thinking about something too much and you're putting it off, you just got to tackle it. And I really like, of course, having lists and all that's a really great thing. If I could just make one more suggestion, probably you've read it before, but the book The One Thing is a really really great book if you're stressed out and you got a lot on your plate, which everybody does, and it's just a good way to kind of organize things and make lists and just tackle one thing at a time. I think it's a great book if you haven't read it. But
I think the one procrastination that probably every startup has, Gantz, and I'm going to ask you this question, is taxes. I've always delayed my taxes to the last possible moment, and it's so stressful.
taxes, yes, and I was I got lucky in the beginning because taxes was stressing me out. It would have stressed me out, and that was another thing. I I got an accountant just to handle my taxes. Like you hear horror stories of maybe accountants uh, stealing and ripping you off, and that's kind of like a knowledge that uh, we all don't really know about. But if they're just handling your taxes, they're just handling your taxes. They're not writing checks. They don't have access to your bank and all that. And for my taxes, it was another small number. It was I believe in the $150 range. I had this lady do my taxes, and to this day, it's the best money I could spend. I just put all my stuff in an envelope. I give it to her. I spend the money. It's the best. I don't ever worry about it. I don't ever really stress about it. It's one of those things where you need to pay somebody to do it and just take it off your plate kind of thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like taxes are quite often something that stress people out a lot, and I don't know what the law is in the US, but in Australia, where I'm from, it's the one place where you're guilty until proven innocent. And so you want to make sure that you paid your taxes. That's for sure. So thanks very much for that, Gantz. It's really interesting what you're sharing there. Like sometimes it's doing that little thing that you need to get done, and just get it off your plate, and it can be so beneficial for reducing the stress. But there's some other things you can do, and I know Jeff tapped, sort of just touched on some of them a few minutes ago. And one of the things, I guess, Jeff, you talked about was just the power of distractions. You're getting constantly distracted by so many different things. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we just need to focus. And I must admit, I took this to the next level where I said to myself, I'm not going to have a things to do list. What I'm going to do is when something comes in and it has to be going on my plate, then I'm going to allocate time for that task. So I allocate it in my schedule, and I just do that, and by putting those, like, a lot of smaller tasks together, I'll say I'm allocating the time. That's the time for all those smaller tasks. And I found that I became eminently more productive versus having a to-do list where you never get to the last thing on the to-do list because it just never gets done. You just don't have the time for it. On the other hand, does that last thing on the to-do list, does it really need to be done? Does it really need to be done? Or is it one of those nice to have done type things? Yeah, so that's one thing I know, Jeff, you touched. And the other thing you touched was having a morning routine. I know my routine's been quite disrupted while I've been traveling quite a lot last few weeks. But when I'm back on home base, I have an absolute clockwork morning routine. And that really helps me a lot. And a part of that routine is spending time, and I call it inputting into myself. In other words, methodically trying to grow myself so that as I grow myself, my business can then grow. Because quite often businesses don't grow because the entrepreneurs don't spend any time in study themselves. Like, I'll be reading a book or something like that, and it could be on the economy, it could be on management, it could be on entrepreneurism, or it could be all sorts of things. And I spend a regulated amount of time every single day doing that. I actually typically do that 7 days a week, and I find that it's actually a really precious time for me because it's something where I'm really focused on myself. But I know there's other people here. There's Fong. Fong, it's great to have you on The Complete Entrepreneur, and welcome to the stage. And thank you for putting your hand up. And by the way, just before we jump to Fong, if you're in the audience saying, I love this topic, I just want to hear some more on this topic, I had some thoughts on this, and I got some questions, then please stick your hand up. We'd love to have you up here. So, Fong, coming to you, you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Michael. Just on my late lunch break, I am speaking from California. I am a medical researcher, been doing this for 30 years. And as Jeff said, yeah, you got to get everything in routine and habit. Just like at 6 a.m., I woke up and I without alarm clock, even way before that. And then do the workout warm up routines, either walking or running. And then get a very good breakfast. So whenever I travel, I make sure that the hotel has have breakfast ready because I don't know I'm gonna get lunch. It could be spending time just talking and networking with folks out there in a conference. And and I think you touched about taxes. Yeah, I agree. Taxes is something I dread about. I not even allow my adult sons, who is accountant and I work for a big university here, to touch my taxes. My accountant does that for a long time now, 30 some years. And yeah, so that taxes is something that I always, I think I would tell her. She always used to call me the last day coming in because she know that I'm not going to come in earlier. Um, and I think you guys touch about pain and stress. I think that's fine. I think stress is okay. I think I like to work with a little bit of stress and challenge. And I know a lot of my clients that I advise. Sometimes they come to me with difficult situations. Usually, and a lot of time, the two projects I involved with the last 3 days, I said I'm thinking about not taking it, and they immediately replied, last they've been pushing now. They said, "Well, we give you another 30% on the per hour. So if you work on this, please help us." Yeah, so I think working with a little stress, a little bit uncomfortable, I think is good. I think you don't want to be too comfortable. I know I learned that lessons when I was at University of California. My professor came in and said, "You're too comfortable. I think it's time for you to move on." And it's true. I look back, still look up to him as my dad, and he know it. He know that time for me to find new challenges. And thanks again for letting me speak, and I appreciate everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting because Master Shida, who started Panasonic, he had a saying: always push yourself out of your comfort zone. And we do that as startups, right? We get really comfortable, everything's going well, and then we're like, do we really need another location? Do we really need another distribution deal? Do we really, we can get comfortable, but there is something to the benefits of pushing yourself out of that comfort zone and then having some of that stress come along with it. Almost like that, there's almost like a healthy stress and sort of an unhealthy stress in business. It's weird. Like you were talking about, Michael, this, you're so excited about something, you're, in some ways, it's not really stress. It's sort of like, it's whatever. I don't know. It's like a drug. Entrepreneurs are like, I know that for a fact. There isn't a domain. I get so excited when I register a domain name, or I think of a new business idea, or we close a deal and we just like party like animals, and yeah, we just closed this big deal, blah blah blah, whatever it is. It's endorphins, like you said. I think, Jeff, like you get something that just triggers in your brain, and it's like a drug. Entrepreneurship, startups, it's a true drug.
Colin, I completely agree with you. Like, I am guilty of this. It is a drug. It really is a drug. The excitement of the deal, and particularly when you've put together something and you've done a lot of work on it, and yeah, that could be stressful doing a huge amount of work, the groundwork, and to finally the day comes, and you're so prepared, and the proposition you're going to be putting in front of the opportunity is absolutely compelling. And I can't help it. Like I'm up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm really excited about it. And you go along, you sit in the meeting and with the person, and you have the answers to all the questions. And they can't. It's almost like what's the word I'm after? They can't say no because you've knocked out all the no's. And there's something really special about that. I know. I want to jump to Michelle in a second. I know one of the things I know in our discussions, Michelle, you've mentioned that at times you just send the contract and you get the contract in front of the client, and that's actually liberating as well in many respects. You've done the groundwork. It's compelling. There's no reason for them to say no. Therefore, just send the contract. And so is that something you've really adopted there, Michelle? And I know at times in your business career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just have to move forward. For me, I'm very much about just moving forward. It's not perfect, but if you just don't get out there and you just are waiting to be perfect, it's never going to happen, which I think, as the gentleman was saying below, Gantz, like that can create this very vicious cycle that's very unhealthy because it prevents you from doing anything else. It prevents your brain from having the space that it needs to creatively think and grow and do whatever it is that you need to do. So that's always been my, of course you know what you're doing and you don't do things stupidly. It's thought out, but never be afraid to just like move forward. It pushes, your stress down. Even if you don't get the answer you want, you know that you're moving forward. But if I can mention a couple of other things too, Michael, is, for me, one thing I've found is it's easy to have a long list of things to do, personal, business, everything. But what is absolutely critical, and I do believe that people should document their priorities and their tasks that, of course, support the company goals. But a big part of that is you have to prioritize. Um, as they say, and I think we all know it's true, is having a list can be very stressful. And even more so, if you're not prioritizing it, then you really don't have a priority. And that's a really dangerous situation to be in because you're just, driving yourself crazy, and you're also creating a very stressful situation, especially if you're in a leadership team, for everybody. And that just leads to a massive amount of inefficiency and stress. And people don't want to, support and build and be happy about the company. So that's a couple of things. And then lastly, one of the things that I have learned Like Jeff said, he's just now figuring some of these things out after 40 years. For me, it's like, because like I said, I always want to move things forward, like I'm sure most people that are here do, because they're interested in startups and entrepreneurship. But is for me is don't create an artificial emergency. Like you're stressed out, you're just trying to get things done and get people to work, and then all of a sudden, somebody doesn't hold up their end or something slips, and it becomes like an emergency. But that also can be a really bad thing emotionally and psychologically for you and people around you, because you can't just be flipping to every emergency. So it's kind of hand in hand, and the prioritization is also just don't create emergencies. It really does affect everybody, and it upsets other people, which is not good to move forward. Thank you.
Wow, Michelle, you hit the nail on the head with quite a few things you said. Is don't create emergencies. I am actually a firm believer that an emergency in business should be rare. I'm an absolute believer in that. In business, you should have everything actually quite planned out. You will have some emergencies hit, but you should have it all planned out. And then if something out of the ordinary happens or whatever, you've got the systems and everything in place that you can handle and manage it. For instance, an emergency for me would be having a DDoS attack on our service or infrastructure. That's an emergency, yeah, but it's not like we haven't planned for it. We have the risk mitigation and all that sort of stuff in place. Business should be 99% of things should be business as usual. The other thing you mentioned there, Michelle, I thought was great, was prioritizing. I'm a firm believer that the enemy of the best is the good. What do I mean by that? Is that I've seen so many entrepreneurs chase so many good deals, they miss out on the best deal because they're trying to race around and do all these different things. With the result, they miss out on the best deal because they don't have the time that they're really in the focus to really drive that deal home. And my wife has a great saying. She says another thing with deals is the deal is not done till the money's in the bank. I love celebrating contracts. That's great. But you know what I celebrate more? Money in the bank. In other words, there's been a consummation of the deal. It's come through. You've delivered a service. The client has paid for that service. It's been done. That's when the celebration really begins. And so, thanks very much for that, Michelle. Do appreciate that wisdom that you have to share on this topic. But I want to come down to Serge. Serge, it's great to see you here on the Complete Entrepreneur. Welcome to the stage, Serge.
Hi, thank you for having me on stage. Well, I wanted to share my stress
Serge, we
makers
can
and
barely hear you. Can you speak up? Is it possible for you to speak up louder? I can barely hear you there. Thank you.
I hope it's better now. I switched the microphone.
Much better, much better. Thank you.
Great, great. So again, thanks for having me, and I want to share my experience with the stress makers and stress reliefs that I use. Basically, my work as CTO for multiple projects, I have to have communication with lots of people, like more than 50 people, and like daily communications, and I have lots of meetings, and those meetings is my main stress, 10 to 16 meetings per day. And then I still want to do my side project, which is my startup in the evening, so I have to survive it. So first, after all of this, as I can say, if you consider number of different topics which are covered, it's and the problem level of stress there, it's like kind of hell. But after that, I have to go work out or run, mostly running, and this is great, as you said, relief, which works for me as a reset. But I want to share my life hack how I do with the meetings. I classify the meetings in more or less three categories. One is the meeting where I have to be. I have to be because of my status, because of the reporting or something that I have to be. So in those meetings, I have to be careful. I have to listen, but not. I'm not in control. Let's say it's not my meeting. So there, this type of meeting, I I allow myself to be a bit relaxed, and I have to be present, but not. It's not mostly on those problems I have to catch and just cherry pick the things inside. So that's one of type. And those meetings are typically long and let's say can be complicated, but this is different stuff. So I'm not in control. I call them I'm not in control. Second type of meeting is where I have to be present emotionally. This is typically with like people from my team members and the people I work with. Ideally, they are offline meetings. I hate to have online meetings where I have to really look and people understand what are the emotions, do they like it, what are the troubles, things like that. It's like one-on-one. It's ideal example, but also this works with a bigger team as well. So this one, when if I'm online, I have to have cameras on, and then I totally like trying to understand what are the emotional situation of the people I speak and so on. So this is another thing. I have to be totally present. And here there was a very nice suggestion: leave everything aside. No like laptops, no screens, no phones. Everything is off. I have to be there. And I have to book enough time for that, because you cannot be in rush when you speak with the people and to understand their emotions. And third type of meeting where I'm in control. This is meetings I organize for my teams to move in on and so on. And here is a life hack. I'm making those meetings short, but I don't book short time for the meeting. I book still like 55 minutes. Actually, I never book 1 hour. I book 55 minutes or 25 minutes or 1 hour, 50 minutes. It's always, I leave 5 or 10 minutes off. And what happens then? For example, I book for 1 hour, but I push the meeting to be much shorter, and I push the meeting to finish within like 40 minutes. And people, after some time, they realize it, and they are actually expecting this. And this is like a life hack. People then really graduated, or how to say proper word. So they have this reward that they have this few free minutes also in the very busy day. But what is my work then is to, yes, put a bit of stress on them, to be very short and precise and to be totally present. Well, in those meetings, I'm totally present, but I also request the other people to be totally present, and I'm asking them to really be listening and be saying straight things without, having any fog around what they say.
Yeah.
So that's
So,
it. After some time, yes.
yeah, I'd say, Sergey, can I just say that you tapped into something there, which I actually think is really interesting concept. One, there's a couple of things there, and I'll maybe bounce up to you in a second, Colin, and get your thoughts on this. The first one was just really being strict around your time management, and you're giving a gift of 10 minutes, 15 minutes to the people in the meeting at the end, because you drive everything to become shorter. I thought that was quite an interesting concept. The other one was you said an interesting thing where you talked about being emotionally present and to really be very focused in those times and to realize that it's not just dealing with tasks and things like that, but it's the emotions and the stake that people may have in the meetings. Is that something, did I pick that up correctly there, Sergey?
Exactly. And this is type of meeting when I have to understand the next, first, how to motivate people in the teams, and I have to understand, let's say, the problems which they don't say straightforward. Many people are not open at all, like, I don't know if I'm not psychologist, maybe introverts or somehow, and they have to understand what is really behind their minds, yes.
Yes, thank you for that. So, Colin, is this something that you found? Do you do this sort of thing when you have your meetings? Are you very conscious of the time and things like that, as well as Sergey was just discussing then?
I'm not certain about that. I do know that when we have planning meetings, like strategic planning meetings, we meet, generally each company will meet 1 day per quarter 2 days annually, but each quarter. So for instance, beginning of the year, we'll meet for 2 days, do a strategic planning session. And then every quarter after that, we'll have a 1 day strategic planning session. And in that meeting, in that time period, we're identifying the problems, we're identifying the issues, and we're coming up with very specific, smart goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, all that kind of stuff. The SMART, an acronym. You can look it up on Google. But the fact of the matter is, we're actually addressing the issues, and we're doing it in an organized way. Now, let me explain my life before I got a CEO coach and begun to bring in these strategic planning sessions and goal setting. It was chaos. We had grown this, it was turned, we had two public companies, a second public company finally went public. Our revenue flatlined. The company was just, there were fights amongst the executives. It was a disaster. And the board was ready to move against me as CEO. And so, the stress of that environment, this ad hoc entrepreneurial startup environment, which is the way that I just sort of you just sort of go with the flow and answer one question at a time and make one decision at a time. And that chaos resulted in a lot of stress. When we brought in strategic planning, when we brought in goal setting, we brought these systems into place that reduced a lot of our stress.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Is that is systems? I call it business as usual. This is just normal meat and potatoes business and business processes, which is it's almost like the life cycle of a business. It goes from that entrepreneurial chaos as such, and by getting those business processes into place, then you can actually accelerate the growth of the business. It doesn't hinder it; you can accelerate it. Um, and I know I've been talking to our team about that, but it's just meat and potatoes. There's business as usual, guys. That's the sort of client we're dealing with this time, or something like that. And it's actually really important to be able to put those processes in place, and to take that. So it's not everything's a surprise. But I want to bring this back a little bit more to the topic of stress. Stress can be caused by other things other than just even meetings or prior to this or too much to do, all that sort of stuff. Stress can also be caused by things like eating the wrong food, not exercising. All those other things can impact stress as well. Or how about stress is about the mindset? And I know Jeff just touched on this very briefly at one point, about what he does to be able to really to bring his mind to a calmer level. But it's things such as what are you actually fueling your body on impacts also your level of stress and how you react in situations. I can guarantee it, because if you only drank Red Bulls continuously all day, well, number one, you probably give yourself a heart attack. But number two, what probably will end up happening is you'll be making some bad decisions along the way because you're so hyped up, and everything, versus being very measured. If you never ever exercise, then exactly the same thing will happen. Like, I must admit, with COVID and everything like that, I piled on some pounds and that sort of stuff. And when I get back home, the job is to get back and exercising and doing all those things, which will make me a more effective entrepreneur and a better person. But also, you know what? I'll probably have a longer life, which is pretty. What's the downside to that? So I just want to come to yourself, Colin.
Oh, I
Is
had a,
this something you think
no, I
about?
had a question for everybody here, actually, and I'm just curious about this. And everybody on stage is so. I know we're stressed out during work, right? We understand that, but 5:30, 6 o'clock, we go home. Do we keep the stress going and impact our family and whatnot? Like, I know one of the things I do sometimes is I go into a hot tub, and I know it sounds weird, but I'll just like come home, go into a hot tub, relax, and I feel like a different person when I do that. I really do. I all of a sudden I recognize I'm making a transition from work to home, And I'm just curious for those on the stage too, if they have any techniques going from this high stress work startup, or does the startup come home with you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, for me, because we run a completely distributed workforce, where everyone works from home. I found I actually had to have a mental shift from, say, my study with the four screens surrounding me and all that sort of stuff, and everything. I had to have a completely mental shift. And my mental shift was I took off my shoes and I put my moccasins on. And that signaled not only to me, but it signaled to my family that, you know what, I was home now. And I had to do that. It became very regimented. In fact, I would never sit down at the dinner table unless I had my moccasins on. And it sounds like a silly thing, but it's the equivalent of, for those who work from home, you'd understand this. It's the equivalent of the drive home in the car for many people. And it is a stress relief. But how about yourself, Jeff? Is there something that you do around this? What Colin was asking just there. I think I may have lost Jeff. So, Michelle, is there something you do as a mental switch
I think Sergey also was going to
work
say
and
something.
home?
Um, yeah,
Sorry.
I'll talk real quickly so Anoop and Sergey can speak. For me, it changes all the time, okay? But it's, trying to change my thoughts, right? So sometimes I go and sit and read. I find reading extremely relaxing. When you're reading, it's really hard to think about anything else other than what you're reading. So I find that relaxing. Or it might just be like going outside, just changing modes. But for me, it's not like, I wish it was as simple, Michael, as changing my shoes. I love shoes actually, but it takes me at least an hour sometimes. And sometimes I can. I'll just be really honest. I'm a person that gets up really early. I wake up at 3 o'clock. I think about things, you know. I'm always looking for ways to manage that myself, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Uh, I must admit, I get up when I'm at home, particularly get up around about 5:30 or something like that, and I find that that's my time, and that's a great time. But I want to jump down to Anoop. Anoop, it's great to have you on the Complete Entrepreneur, and love to have you up. Thank you for coming up on the stage, and what you got to share on this topic.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a very interesting topic. And I'm second generation Silicon Valley, so I've seen a lot of different startups and friends and family members doing, community members doing companies. And I can definitely say, having done a few myself now, the wilderness period of the startup is when the stress is absolutely inevitable for a founder. It is. It doesn't matter how good you are at managing um, your stress levels. You're going to see a rise in your cortisol. It's going to be relentless, and it should impact your body. It definitely does. Like, people often attribute um body harm to what some professional athletes put themselves through, maybe players in the NBA or the NFL or what have you. But I feel that startup entrepreneurs impact and injure their bodies. And this is something that we need to kind of bring to the forefront, because even if you're really good at taking care of yourself, you're watching your diet, you're exercising, your stress levels are going to go up when there's rampant uncertainty and an overwhelming amount of responsibility put on your shoulders. So that's something that I've experienced. I've seen my friends also experience the same thing. But I think when you get to an inflection point within the company where there's more stability, then those levels can stabilize and then start to come down. But that's just an experience that I had. So I thought it was an interesting topic. I thought I'd jump in. Thanks so much, guys.
It's interesting, Anoop. I'm just curious because you said you did multiple startups, right? And as you know, I have, and Michael has, and everybody on the stage, most of us are serial entrepreneurs. And as I get older, I'm 52 now, and as I get older, I I don't think I can do it anymore. I don't think I can do what I did in my 20s. And that's why you see these Silicon Valley startups with the 20-year-olds, because they're the ones who they don't have any responsibilities. They're up 16 hours a day. They're just doing this, that, and the other. I've tried to move on from that model into a whole different model where I invest in companies and it's more of a family office. But I'm just curious from your perspective, as you get older, are you finding it changes? It's changing it's harder and harder to handle the stress of these startups.
Yeah, it is. And I won't do another one after the current one that I'm doing. I will get into some other things.
You're
And
actually
I've
going to
done other
quit. You're
things
actually
before.
saying this is too freaking stressful.
No,
I'm
no,
not doing this
no.
again.
I'm not
Is
going to
that what you're
quit.
saying?
It's not that I'm going to quit. It's just that, I'm expecting good success with this current venture. And I think that after this, I won't be doing the 0 to 1 anymore. Let's just say that. Like, I'll probably get involved at different levels and in different ways. But the 0 to 1 grind for the founders is absolutely the brutal element that you're talking about. That, hey, I'm 52. This is maybe a bit too much for me. And from my view, this is very similar to deciding to be a Navy SEAL or deciding to go through medical school, which my brother did recently, and now he's much younger than me. He's a resident in a hospital, but that process was again absolutely grueling. And each startup that you do, it has its own challenges, it has its own tribulations, but there it's it's not something you want to do forever. You want to get into bigger companies, I think. You want to get into maybe policy, something where you're not the battery, the entire battery, because that's what the founders are. The founders are the battery. And I see there's so many now. There used to be very few VCs in Silicon Valley, like early 90s, even through the 90s. Capital was very, very tough to get. My uncle did a company, actually didn't do well, but getting capital then was tough, and you needed about $1 million to start a company. And now the costs have gone down, so there's a lot of companies, but there's a hell of a lot of VCs now. But I wonder, because I'm talking to some of these guys, and I've been talking to them over the last decade, I wonder how much experience they have actually making 0 to 1 companies themselves. And I don't know if they have that much. I feel like a lot of the VC community has gone off onto a sort of a tangential path where the VCs were very intimately involved with companies previously, and now they're kind of playing more of a financial management type role for startups, for their startup portfolios. It's very different, and I think a lot of people are realizing they don't want the 0 to 1. They don't want to be in early stage. They want to be in growth stage. So there's a little bit of a void there, and there's some avoidance, which it's due to the topic of this room, which is the stress of getting that startup going. A damn hard thing to do.
Well, I know I have a number of
I don't know,
friends
but
who actually have started companies, sold them, and have chosen never to go back into a startup again. And I tell you, I mean, for me, I keep coming back because the drug outweighs the stress. It's sort of interesting.
But Anoop, I love that you kept mentioning 0 to 1, because 0 to 1 in almost every context is the hardest. You know, zero, going from nothing to that first sale, taking the first step of anything, any project, a race, and anything. 0 to 1 is always the hardest. Getting someone to go from having something for free to paying a penny for it is the hardest. 0 to 1 is just a great concept. So I love that you
It's
kept
the
mentioning that.
worst, right? It's the worst. I
Right.
hate it.
But
Toughest thing in
oh,
the
in
come
world.
on,
every
you guys
context,
are
0 to 1 is always
absolutely
the hardest step.
You know, I was
You guys are
talking with
wusses. I love it.
one of my friends who's a neurosurgeon, and we were comparing whose job is harder. Um, and he basically told me, and he does these long surgeries, 8, 9 hours, where it's just he's just sweating. He's completely done after the surgery, like he's kaput, right? And he was telling me my job is harder because it's a different type of intensity, and it's a protracted intensity. It's an enduring intensity that is required over a long period of time, and it depends again on the wilderness cycle. So how long are you going to stay at zero? If you're going to stay at zero
Yeah.
for 3 months, it's going to be tough. But if you're going to stay at zero for 3 years, then you're going to start seeing major impacts on your life and your health. So it depends on
Yeah.
each venture.
Like I must admit, I'm hearing this, and I I love I love the cut and thrust of a 0 to 1. I love launching essentially like a new concept. I just live for that. Coming up with new ideas and just really going for it, and being smarter each time you do that. But to me, it's the best drug in the world. Yeah, it really is. Um, and there is nothing like it. So I agree, it can be grueling. It's like getting a great big boulder and you're trying to push this great big boulder up the hill. But I'll tell you what, when you've got a good team around you and you're pushing the boulder up the hill together, there is nothing like that. And you get to the top of the hill and it begins to get some momentum and you can feel it. And you feel in the core of your being, and there's an aspect of euphoria, which maybe we should have a topic on euphoria as an entrepreneur, because there is an aspect of euphoria where you go, "Oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever," and I just love that feeling, and I love, dare I say, I've been in many situations where it's a real grind and you get to the end of each day and you're completely spent. And we're talking about stress in this session, but you are completely spent. But you know what? There's nothing like it as well. There really is nothing quite like it. Um,
It's
and that's why, that,
yeah.
sorry,
No, I totally agree with what you're saying.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah. It is it can be quite addictive. Like I'm 56 years old and I feel like I'm 21. I really do. And, uh, I just love doing what I do. Yeah, it's there's nothing like it. But that's why we talk about these sort of topics on the Complete Entrepreneur. And I hate to say it, guys, we've run out of time. But next week we're going to be talking about what's it like as an entrepreneur when you're in some of these grind or 0 to 1 times, and the impact that has on your relationships. And how do you actually manage that? And it can be really quite tough managing situation with your relationships. But just before we go, because I really love this conversation, I just want to take it back to possibly Michelle. Michelle, what's going on with Startup Club?
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Michael, and thanks for all the members that join. We really appreciate it. And we're here every week, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And we've got an amazing show actually tomorrow, which is Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, which
Two
is,
o'clock Eastern.
yeah, 2 o'clock, sorry, tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern time, which is about the art of war. I'm sure everybody here knows the book. It's an ancient book. I think it was from 5 BC or something. But this young lady, her name is Rusha Jyoti, has actually taken the concept and broken it down in the most amazing way so that it applies to startups. So she's going to be here tomorrow as our special guest at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Serial Entrepreneur. We really hope you can join, and we're looking forward to a really engaged conversation. So thanks so much, Michael or Colin, back to you.
Yeah, and thanks very much for that, Michelle. Lots of things are happening at Startup Club. and make sure you sign up for that mailing list. Go to startup.club in your browser. I know you're in the Clubhouse app, but go in the browser so you don't miss out on those great things. And by the way, for those of you who haven't read The Art of War, I highly recommend you read that book. It is an amazing book. I've read it numbers of times and just absolutely love it. So I'm looking forward to, hopefully I'll get a chance to be in the session with you all tomorrow at 2 p.m. In the meantime, you've been listening to The Complete Entrepreneur, and it happens every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And I just want to thank all those that came up on stage. Thank you for sharing. It's been great hearing from you up here. It really has. Also for the moderators, Colin, Jeff, Michelle, it's fantastic. You covering for me as I was in my Uber heading towards a hotel here in Boston, and I do appreciate that. But for all of you in the audience, you're the reason why we do this. You're battling out there in your business, and we really hope that you find these sessions incredibly valuable, and we can see you next week. So God bless you. Have a great week. Bye.
Great show, Michael. Anoop, I just sent you a text message through the back channel.
Okay.
Great